This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 82, the movie review of Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot, Ian Jones.
Oh man, I could use a couple more Spider-Man movies. Like maybe they could just keep them going. Just keep them going. You know, there are other villains. Let's do it. Come on.
There's a ton of it. Spider-Man has a lot of villains.
Let's go. Let's get this done here.
Maybe we'll eventually get. If you keep putting these villains through, you'll eventually get a Sinister Six movie, which would be really interesting to try to figure all of those villains
and
out.
That's what Sony was kind of headed down, but
they were trying to do that.
That's kind of an interesting thing because depending on how much money Spider-Man makes, Marvel could lose their deal, their partnership with Sony. Yeah. So it's a precarious thing because I like and I want to talk about this, but I like what they've done with this iteration. Like they've taken it and it's become more modern. Like it's not Spider-Man stuck in the 90s or early 2000s. So it's a really modern take on it. And you know, and I'll get into this, but there are some things really specifically that I want to see moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wait. Like, I don't think they should let Tom Holland do other movies. I think he's just got to be stuck wearing the red suit. And
it's so funny because Tom Holland hasn't done much in his career for the most part. Anyway, so I mean, this is definitely his big role, and he's done such a good job with Spider-Man and Peter Parker. He's the first one we've had where both are good. So it's just been really great to see him kind of take this character on and really let it blossom. It's just so good because Spider-Man has always been one of my favorite Marvel characters. So it's nice to kind of get that feeling. And I like how they've done this Spider-Man because he's a little bit different than what I'm used to, but he's also a little similar to how he used to be. So he has like it's so cool how they're able to like bridge this gap because my father used to read Spider-Man comics because Spider-Man's been around forever. Yeah. So my father used to read Spider-Man comics and when he was a kid, and he loves this Spider-Man also. It's like even though I've had a more modern version before, like in the 90s when I was growing up, you know, when he was growing up, there's still these extra little things that bridges this gap, and it's so great. He does such a great job. It's like such a great version of Spider-Man. He's just like exactly how somehow they managed to get it exactly how everyone likes it. And that is really difficult to do.
It is, especially with such a beloved character.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, it's great. I've enjoyed these movies so much, and I agree. I want to see more and more and more Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, and I hope we keep getting more, man. I hope we keep getting. Oh man, it's just been great. The only thing I can think of to talk about, Joe, is because I mean we're getting towards the end of the summer here, and so we're starting to dwindle down on movies here. And the only thing I can think about talking about is I kind of want to complain a little bit about the. Did you get the new Hobbs and Shaw trailer?
I did, yeah.
So I obviously will know when we see this movie, and I'm assuming that there's a lot of things in this movie that you will not, that is not in the trailers. But I've gotten to the point where I feel like I can piece together
what the movie is.
Fight
right,
scenes.
Yeah, I know.
but
they've shown way too much.
They've shown so much of that movie, and you know me. I'm the type of person that avoids trailers
You do.
The only time I see them is when I go to the theater. So that's the reason why some trailers that people have told me about, I have never even seen. Like, I still haven't seen, like, a 21 Bridges trailer at all. I haven't seen anything on that whatsoever. And so I'm going, whenever I see that movie, I'm just going to be completely blind. But Hobbs and Shaw, I feel like there's so many scenes in there where I feel like, okay, so now they've shown even more sequences. And now I can almost piece together entire scenes. And I'm just like, man, I wonder how long this movie is, and I wonder if they're going to surprise us with anything that we haven't seen in the trailer.
I don't know. You know, and it's one of those things where, like, I know producers on films, they always fret over, like, if it's a comedy, for example, they always have to ask themselves the question, do we show the funniest parts of the movie in the trailer in order to get people to show up?
Yes.
But then that ruins the biggest jokes for the
Yes.
actual audience. And I think the audience ends up not really enjoying it as much anymore. And so that's one of those things where, you know, hey, they don't have Vin Diesel, but they've got, you know, a really big action star.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jason Statham also has his following. So, you know, with the cast and everything, you would think it's going to be a big opening. There is probably going to be a huge drop off in the second weekend, but they could make all their money back. You know, the Fast and Furious franchise has never not done well. I think maybe
it's always done well.
I think maybe the second movie didn't do as well, but then they quickly turned it right around and made it profitable again.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think they're hurting it because you know that the very last scene is them, you know, is fighting with Roman Reigns and like that, the Samoan homecoming thing. So everything they go through up until that point, you know, they're going to survive. No matter how ridiculous it is.
Well, yes.
And that kind of leaves me with a chip on my shoulder. And I love trailers and everything, but I think what's really great is when you don't totally give away what the story is going to be. And certainly not enough to where you can piece together, you know, like, oh, this is definitely from when they first meet. This is definitely right in the middle when they, you know, this is the second act when they finally decide to work together. And here's your final sequence. You know,
it is very disappointing. I definitely, it's kind of funny because I was talking to Mark about this, the friend of the podcast, Mark over there.
Good old Mark.
Yeah, he was saying that his wife said that she no longer wanted to see the movie after this trailer. And I think that is telling because it absolutely tells everything. You can actually see all three acts in the trailer. Now that you've seen both, you can see all three acts, and that's really, really disappointing. It's so weird because I feel like the first trailer they showed just enough. And they kind of didn't need to expand on that.
They should have just kept that eye gag in there.
Yeah,
like I mean that says everything about the movie. And then then you could have Idris Elba just saying that he's Black Superman.
Yeah,
you know, you do a couple little cuts, and you end with The Rock saying, wow, he really is Black Superman, and you're done. You've got everyone on the line. You don't need to show anything else.
No.
You set it up, you've got this...
Yeah. Everybody is already hooked. Like, everybody already wants to see this
Everyone was already
movie.
hooked with that, so just keep that there.
Yeah, it's very... I was like, dang, man. They ended up, like, showing so much more. Like, they added so many more scenes, and I'm like, why would you do that? Just cut it a little differently. Maybe add, like, a couple more new scenes. And that's it. That's all you need. But you're right. You can see everything. Like, I'm 100% sure that him going on that island and with his, like, mom and everything, I'm like 100% sure that's the end sequence.
So,
because they didn't even show, like, they show The Rock specifically going, you know, get off my island or whatever. So, like, you know that it ends there, you know? Like, before, it's like, oh, maybe this is just a sequence that just happens. But no, you're just like, no, that's gotta be, like, the last thing. And so it's just, I don't know. It's so crazy. I just wanted to complain about that. That was the only, that's the only thing I wanted to
well, I'll tell you, some of these trailers, too, like how they edited this last one with that song.
Oh,
I thought just totally, like, it just, like, starts and stops, and then they, like, talk, and then it kicks it, like, you know, I hate it. It reminds me of that Godzilla trailer that Annie started laughing at, which I thought was like, okay, well, that doesn't bode well.
With
for that
somewhere
particular
over
movie,
the rainbow,
that someone's sitting there laughing at it because it's so bad.
That was a really weird trailer. I'm not sure who made the decision to allow that to happen. That just made no sense at all to me. And it's a shame, you know, I wanted to do a podcast on Godzilla because I really enjoyed Godzilla. I thought it was a great
I know, it's just, it's tough because I like doing these movies with Annie, although this one I took Tristan to, so
yeah.
I mean that was a lot of fun that we got to go and do that together.
Yeah.
And he thoroughly enjoyed the movie, not not giving anything away here, but you know, the thing is, we've got these. So not only is the music and the editing in some of these trailers, I think, been really bad. And maybe it's always been that way, but we've been spoiled by really good trailers. For example, like the Star Wars teaser, a lot of the Avenger ones, like they're solid, they're really solid trailers that don't give away a whole lot. And now we're starting to see franchises that are maybe trying to follow the same pattern, but they're doing trailers like it's the 1990s.
Yes,
again,
it is.
You know?
It is. It absolutely has that same feel from like the 90s where it reminds me of that joke from The Simpsons where Homer is in the video rental place and he watches the trailer and then he's just like, oh, you interested in this movie? He goes, ha, no, that trailer showed pretty much the whole movie. I'm not even going to bother watching it. Right. And it's that kind of thing is happening again, and it's really upsetting because, like you said, we've been getting really solid trailers that don't really show a whole lot, and then they actually kind of just pique your interest, and that's it. Now, it's probably a lot easier for like all the Marvel movies because a lot of these characters are already introduced and everything, but I feel like the first trailer for Hobbs and Shaw was really it was just enough. It was just enough. You could see that it's going to be the tone of the movie and how everything works out. It's really good. So I don't know why this second trailer came out and ruined everything. It's just like really bizarre. I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know if they felt like they needed to spend some extra money. Did they have some extra money lying around? Or that they needed to just, let's throw this other trailer out, make sure people remember Hobbs and Shaw. I don't know.
More explosions, damn it.
Yeah, I don't understand because I feel like people were already who was gonna go watch that movie was gonna watch that movie. I feel like the only people that you've moved away from the only thing you've done through this new trailer is the people who normally wouldn't see Hobbs and Shaw and were into it after the first trailer are now just like, I don't want to see it.
Just wait for Netflix or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
it's disappointing because I don't understand the logic because these movies have been the Fast and Furious movies, especially the past like 2 or 3, have been really successful. So it's like you don't need to try that hard. You just don't. And, like people are gonna go watch it. People understand that this is that hole that Fast and Furious has filled. That whole action, kind of dumb, stupid, crazy, off-the-top action movie that we hadn't had for years. They filled that hole, so, I mean, people are going to go watch these movies because they're fun.
Yeah.
So it's just a little disappointing. You got anything else, Jones?
No, I think we've fully covered this particular subject.
It's gone on way longer than I thought.
Our
so,
dissertation on Fast or
that's
Hobbs
the problem. For Hobbs and Shaw. That's the problem when I decide to start ranting about something.
Hey, I enjoy your rants, my friend. So keep them coming.
All right. I know we've been doing a different format for a little while, but I think we should go ahead and take a break, and then let's just actually get into Spider-Man after that. How about that?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Oh, man. Unbelievable. All right, Jones, we're back here for our break, and let's go ahead and get into Spider-Man. So,
all right.
This movie is basically following the events right after Endgame, like it's almost immediately after Endgame, and it's directed by John Watts, who did the previous Spider-Man Homecoming movie, and it's got all the same people in there. So I don't know why I need to go into actors, but Tom Holland, Samuel L. Jackson. Jake Gyllenhaal is the new character added in here as Quentin Beck or Mysterio. And I talked about this on the last podcast because I know you are not much of a Gyllenhaal fan.
I am not. I'm really not. However, since I know it's... So, all right. We'll talk about this in my...
Okay,
we'll talk about this in a little bit.
All right, so I was curious how you felt about Gyllenhaal in this movie, and he was the only new one added, so everyone else is kind of the same characters. So I figured that we would get right into it, man. So
great, okay.
Go ahead and go, man. I'm gonna let you go first this time with our quirks and likes.
You want me to start with my quirks?
Yes,
eh?
I want you to start. I do it to you every once in a while.
Sure.
I spring it on you.
Yeah, no, this is good because I'm such a Spider-Man buff.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So just going back to the first Spider-Man. What was the first one with Tom Holland? Because isn't this the third movie?
No, this is the second movie.
This is the second movie.
There's Homecoming, and then there's Far From Home.
Okay, all right. So
it's technically the third movie with Tom Holland because Civil War exists.
Oh, well, and maybe even more than that, right? Because...
Well, yeah, now, because of the, Endgame and everything.
And we got kids awake. So if you hear that in the background, it's just my family. We're a family podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
So here's my thing. Go and I want you to try to remember Homecoming when I say this.
Yes.
Even in death, Tony Stark's demons are coming back to haunt Spider-Man.
Yes.
And quite literally this time. It's an ongoing theme with, I think, these movies in general, and even and even the Iron Man movies. But going back to Homecoming, starting with Vulture, a guy who, Michael Keaton's character,
yeah,
who lost everything because Tony Stark took it away from his business. I mean, he was looking for, some payback. He was looking for a way to survive. But as a result, there were all these villains that were kind of being set up, like Scorpion and, people who wanted a piece of Spider-Man because of Tony Stark's actions. And I was really wondering if, now that the snap happened, now that everyone came back, if that was, if we were going to have more of that storyline or not. And they just avoided it altogether, which I think is fine because it could always come back in. It could always be in play. But the problem I have with it, and here's where the quirk is. Iron Man casts such a long shadow, and I think it's time for Spidey to step out of that. And I know that that's what the movie is hinting at its core.
Yes, it is.
But do we really fully get that journey by the end? So that's the thing I'm left questioning.
You know what? That is a good point. I think that through this whole movie, the whole point of it is to have a new Iron Man and how he needs to step out of that and take over. And I by the end of the movie, you don't quite get that. And I'm not exactly sure what you could do. Like, you could do a more... Like, you could do a simple scene, because the reason why is this movie ends with essentially Mysterio, like, basically framing him, which is something Mysterio does. Like, that's just his character.
Yeah,
who,
right.
like, does stuff like that. And so you don't really get, like, the resolution that you want, where you can where you do the real simple scene of, like, having him just doing, like I mean, I'm pretty sure the other one ends like that too, where he's just web slinging and he's just kind of doing his thing. And I think a lot of the movies end that way, but it shows that he's come to a point where he's Spider-Man, and he's the one that's the important character here. And you don't really necessarily get that in this movie. So I can see that.
And so I'm wondering, because of something you just said now, yeah. That is the thing. They keep saying the world needs the next Iron Man. I think this movie actually highlighted that is not the case. I think what the world in the MCU needs is another leader for the Avengers. So I really was kind of like, I think this is what's going on here. Like really at the core, like, that's the issue that they have to figure out. And is Parker going to be the guy to do that? I think it should be Peter Parker. I think it makes a lot of sense. He was under Iron Man's, tutelage for so long. I think it should be him. He had Cap's respect. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think they didn't. I think they missed the point. This was what the thing that really was highlighted is that the world needs the next leader for the Avengers.
Okay, I think you make a very, very good point, and I didn't really think of that as I was watching the movie. It definitely doesn't quite hit home that he should be the new leader of the Avengers, and I think it'd be really important that he would become the new leader of the Avengers. I think that would be kind of an interesting thing to do, even though he's still just a kid. So I don't know. I think that would be an interesting take on how to get that done, to have this new leader here. It is interesting that through the whole time period that you have this Avengers level threat, and they kind of describe through the whole time that the Avengers are just, like, not showing up.
Right, yeah.
Which I always thought was so weird, because there's a couple scenes in there with, like, Mysterio being like, any Avengers? And they're just like, no. and then they would continue with the story. And I was like, that's like kind of a weird thing that would happen a couple times.
And it's kind of funny, too, because if Mysterio was actually from another dimension, and these things were from another dimension, the guy who would be answering the call is Doctor Strange.
Yes.
So the fact that Doctor Strange has no interest in helping out whatsoever means that it's not on his cosmic radar, and that should have been a huge red flag for everyone.
Yes. It's so crazy. All right, you got anything else you to say about this one? About the court?
Yes. Hang on, sorry, you caught me mid-sip.
I tried to drag that sentence out as much as possible.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Okay, I've got 2 other things to talk about here.
All right.
Maybe 3. I'll try to be quick about it.
Take your time.
So, all right. Part of the coming of age theme that this movie has, I think, feels out of place in the grander scheme of things. Because Nick Fury, who we find out isn't even Nick Fury at all, and that really pissed me off. I had a huge problem with that. Nick Fury really foresees a huge problem, that there is no Iron Man, there's no Captain America, and he's really grasping at thin air for a chance to do something about it. Yeah. And I think there's a bigger story here that should be told, other than Pete's interest in MJ. But the thing is, his love for her has always been kind of a source that pulls him into leading two lives. So I thought that made sense. But, when I really think about it, I think they really show that he's a teenager in this movie, and he's got to grow up. Like he has to be able to lead that life in a different way. Like, if he's gonna do the hero thing, he just wants to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but these are not friendly times here, and so I think it's kind of like a trial by fire thing, and he doesn't do well in his first two outings with Mysterio. Like, he's almost virtually no help whatsoever. And I kind of had an issue with that. I understood the first time because he was totally caught off guard. But, the second time when they should have been working together, he just wasn't really contributing much to the effort. No, he wasn't. And I thought that wasn't really... Spider-Man doesn't have the kind of cosmic powers to be able to handle something that big, but he is smart enough to be able to handle a villain and figure out how to defeat a villain. So that's what they show at the end of the movie, but he just wasn't using any of that. He wasn't using, that side of him. So
and just to add on to what you're saying here, just to throw one of my quirks in the middle of yours, is one of the problems I have with this movie is they mentioned that it's okay for him to be the smartest person in the room, and specifically Peter Parker is a really bright kid. Like, that's always been his storyline, including in this one. And the thing that I just couldn't stand, now he makes a lot of mistakes in this movie, like a lot of mistakes. Some of them I could justify as like a teenager type mistake, like him giving the glasses over. It's a conflict within himself, so him giving the glasses over to Mysterio is like a huge mistake, and I'm okay with that because I can see how he wants to just live his life, and so I can see how that's a thing. But the one scene that bothered the hell out of me is right before he gets hit by a train. Because he falls for it again. He just got through this, like, during that fight, he just got through dealing with all of the illusions and everything. And to make him think that, oh, well, Nick Fury just shows up and shoots him in the back, and that's actually what had happened, really bothered me. It bothered me so much. I'm like, there's no way he shouldn't have been more skeptical in that moment. In that specific moment, he should have just been like, wait a minute, this isn't right. And it would even be okay if he still gets hit by the train. But I wish they would have acknowledged that he knew. He's like, wait. And then gets hit by the train, or something. But he got completely tricked again, and it bothered me so much. And I'm like, Peter Parker's like a really bright kid, like he can figure this stuff out. So having that scene specifically really bothered the hell out of me, and I'm just like, why would he fall for it again? I don't understand. It just annoyed the hell out of me so much. And I'll just throw that. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Gotcha. Okay. The lack of response by authorities is staggering. Even Fury is kind of just sitting on his ass and watching everything, and now we know why. Yes. But the only thing they show, and the thing is, like, all these places they're at, they've got SWAT. They have first responders. It's a big problem in places like France and, Prague. And so, like, the fact that the only thing we see are two Buckingham Palace guards with automatic rifles, like, that makes zero sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, there's definitely nothing. Everybody is very kind of fend for themselves.
Yeah, I know. It does have a feeling like, yeah, you're on your own. You're on your own. There's no Avengers. There's no law enforcement. Everyone just said peace out. Like, what is going on over in Europe?
Oh, that's very true. You got any other ones?
The last one, which is a little thing, which I could probably let go, but
no, because I got a bunch of petty ones.
Okay, all right. So I don't understand how Peter was just able to take Edith back and pull the plug. Like,
oh, yep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, doesn't that seem
when that happened? I was just like, how is he able to just? Like, he had to go through confirmation and everything the first time around. Yeah. How is he able to just put it back on and just be like, oh, no, it's me now? He transferred everything over.
I know. Like, why would it even respond to him?
Right? Why would it even respond to him? And so it's funny because when he picks up the glasses, when he takes it from him, that's the first thing I thought of. Like, well, wait a minute. He doesn't have access anymore. And they just bypass it entirely. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, that's great.
Okay. That's it out of me.
Okay, so I got a couple more quirks. Okay. I got one, since we're already talking about petty ones, I'll go ahead and say my petty one. And that's, I couldn't stand anything that involved with the tour. I just hate I hated all the scenes with the teachers.
You did.
And I just didn't like it at all, man. I remember every time they were, because they're little vignettes throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
And they're used as like transitional scenes, so I understand why they're used. But I'm just like, every time one of them starts up, I'm just
You're just like, oh, is there a bathroom near me? Jesus. Well, God, it's so funny because I actually kind of like them, but I'll tell you the thing that sold me on them.
All right,
since you really don't like them, and I think
like it. This whole time I was just like, get back to Spider-Man.
Get back to Spider-Man. I know, yeah, it's like watching a pointless side quest when you really just want to follow the hero, you know.
Yep.
Like, just come on, let's go. Hero versus bad guy.
Yep.
Get to the end. What was I gonna say? The thing I liked about him is like there's this story that this teacher offers up, which is almost, I think it's when they're in the plane. You know, that whole plane sequence where they're trying to scheme and switch seats. But, like, where the teacher was like, you know, I had a funeral for my wife, and she ran away with some other guy and pretended to blink. And, like, I was just like, oh my God. Like, it's so messed up, and he just tells his 16-year-old student this incredibly messed up, this deeply disturbing thing. He's like, well, we had a fake funeral. I mean, it was a real funeral, because everyone showed up and cried. And I'm just like, God.
Yeah, that scene, I enjoyed that scene. Because I was just like, oh my God.
But you would have been fine if they just all died. And
no, I would have totally okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. I was just like, I just hated so many things cutting back to these characters. And I'm just like, why do they keep cutting back to these people? So, like, I just couldn't stand, like, these European vacation, like, vignettes throughout. It was just, like, such a weird thing. I couldn't stand it. The only other quirk I have, and this kind of actually latches back onto your whole leader of the Avengers thing, is throughout Spider-Man Homecoming, and even through Civil War, Spider-Man's character changes a little bit in this movie. He starts out, and when you first see him in Civil War, he kind of is like, reluctantly kind of goes along, but he's excited. He's excited about getting a part of this and essentially becoming an Avenger. And all of Homecoming through the whole movie, he is excited about becoming an Avenger, and that movie is essentially Tony Stark testing him on whether he can do it or not. And it ends with him kind of being like, oh, well, I'm not sure, but like, I want to do this. And then he proceeds to join in immediately in the Avengers movie. And then he kind of goes back to the end of Homecoming. And I think that hurts the character just a little bit in terms of the MCU, all the MCU movies, because he changes in Avengers, in like Infinity War and in Endgame, but he's back to where he was at the end of Homecoming by the beginning of this movie, where he just wants to live his life. And it's just kind of like a weird little thing. And I think this is just one of those things that just happens when you have all this huge, massive story that's going on through this whole MCU. So his character kind of changes and then goes back a little bit. And I just remember that bothered me just a little bit, because it seemed like he's really reluctant. But when the last movie we saw him in Infinity War and Endgame, he was a part of the team. And so it was just kind of weird that he kind of like doesn't want to do that anymore. It's like he goes back to the end of Homecoming. So I thought that was a little strange. And that was the only other thing that I had. I think we discussed everything else.
Cool.
Pretty good.
All right.
So let's get with your likes, man.
Okay. So, you're gonna spit your coffee out over there when I say this. But I really enjoyed Jake Gyllenhaal in this movie.
What?
I thought he was great. I thought it was a little weird at the beginning, but then I don't know. I thought he was behaving just a little too, like, he was a little too warm and a little too welcoming to Peter for a guy who just lost his whole world.
Yeah.
You know, for a guy who lost everything. And, you know, a lot of us who understand Mysterio kind of thought that this could happen, that he would be, that this could all just be one big illusion, that it could be something else and something more, and that's what we found out really early on. And I'm glad that we did, because we got to see who Beck really was, you know, before even the second act. Like, we got to see what he was about. And even though, like, he goes out in the same fashion that, you know, like every Marvel villain does, like, his demise is handled in such a unique way. And there's, so not only did I love the effects and how they showed it, the fact that they were doing smoke and mirrors and illusions out of things that were tangible, that had already been set up by the other movies, drones, projectors, you know,
so cool.
These different simulations and everything. I love that take on it for Mysterio. Because it's already really cool. Things that are established in the world of Iron Man. But the fact that his big issue is that he wants to overshadow everything that Tony Stark did. He basically wants to attack Iron Man's legacy. He wants to be a bigger hero than anyone ever and just erase, you know, to get people to forget about Tony Stark. And in a weird way, what he does at the end of the movie almost ensures that's going to happen. Because anonymity was never a thing for Tony Stark. And the world knew he was Iron Man, and they needed to know, because there needed to be a face on these heroes. Like, for good or bad, he was the face. He was Earth's mightiest defender. You know, for sure, hands down. So when you look at that, what Mysterio does at the very end of the movie, which is hugely controversial because he reveals Spider-Man's true identity to the whole world. What it actually does is put Spidey in a situation where he does have to become. He does now have to become the next Iron Man because everyone knows who he is.
Yep.
So, you know, hero worship, whatever, the weight of that, the responsibility that, you know, they almost wrote themselves into a corner, which I would love to see how they're going to address, because I don't think you can undo what happened. I don't think you can take that back. That's out there, and so now they have to move forward with it. And I thought that was really interesting, because if that was what his goal was, he fell just short of it, but he almost, by releasing the video, ensures that Spider-Man is going to have to live up to that legacy.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting take on doing that, because as far as I remember, Spider-Man has never been outed. Like people never have known who Peter Parker is. So it's a totally new thing that's completely new to me.
Right,
and it's really interesting an interesting take on, like, okay, well, how are they going to handle this? Because Spider-Man's never been this. He's like always been behind the mask, and he's always had to been like this kid, and later on he becomes older and an adult, but still he's still Peter Parker, but he doesn't have that anymore. So I'm really curious how that works.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting.
Not only that, but just thinking about what you said, like, because they never deal with this, but when Aunt May finds out he is Spider-Man, which was how Homecoming ended.
Yes.
Like, I mean, that was a huge thing, I thought, too, which they never addressed. Like, she's never at any point worried about him. In fact, she's trying to get him in the suit even more, and I'm just not sure that just doesn't feel right to me. Like, as a parent, I would think it would need to be the obvious that he would have to go back to sneaking around. And maybe that's just an extra layer of complication that they didn't do or feel they had to do because he already saved the planet.
Yes, because he already saved everything. So,
I don't know.
Yeah, and the only other way to fix that is if you have another scene with Aunt May, which happens in the other movies and in the comics, where Aunt May talks to him and is like, you can do this. Like, he usually has like a conversation with that where she actually trusts him. She's always been, her character, I feel like in every incarnation, has always been kind of more of a supportive character as opposed to the more like parental responsibility of what is happening. She's always been more, well, you need to deal with this, and this is you now, and you have to move forward with it. And that's actually mentioned again. That version of May is also mentioned when you watch End of the Spider-Verse. It's the same sort of Aunt May. That's just like kind of just, you know, this is you. This is just kind of how it is. So it's definitely a little different take, but I could see that.
You know, I really loved I loved the visuals, not necessarily the elemental stuff, but more how they handled the illusions, how they showed what Mysterio was actually seeing, what he really looked like versus what Peter was having to deal with, and even, you know, the visuals of him having to take on these illusions that are hurting him, that are physically hurting him. Like I thought all of that was really cool. I was pretty underwhelmed by like the lava monster. Yeah. So I'm glad that there was something that there was a different layer to this that we saw behind the scene. Like it set up something that was so much cooler, that I thought was like, okay, this is badass comic book style stuff here that we're getting to see, not just a giant monster, but, you know, we're seeing Peter working on building his new suit, which is really cool to see, because he's figuring it out. He's thinking about what modifications he has to make, and that is so Spider-Man. That is so cool. I love that we get the web wings finally. Like there's all these little touches that we start getting towards the end of the movie that I'm just like, this is what needs to happen earlier on. Like, it was so worth it, but I want to see more of this. I want to see Peter using his mind too, and then going out and kicking some ass, and that's exactly what he does at the end of the movie. And I love the little, and I'm probably taking a lot of your things here by saying this, but I love that he comes out with when his web shooter stopped working, he comes out with like a makeshift hammer and shield, and like I thought that was really cool,
I thought that was so cool too, man. That was like such a cool scene. I was just like, yeah, here we go. And he comes up with a very unique way to use them to help his to problem solve. It was so cool. And just to add on, I agree. I think all of the illusion scenes are some of my favorite sequences in the movie. They're so good. Having Peter Parker problem solve, which is what he does. That is Spider-Man. That's just what his character has always done. And he always fights in a very unique way from other people. So having all of those scenes in it was just so cool and so great. It was very Spider-Man. It was very comic booky. I loved it. It was great. It was absolutely great. Got any other likes?
No, that's it. I was gonna let you take over now.
Okay, that's cool. Okay. I have just adding on to that. I've really enjoyed what they've done with this Spider-Man, and the only other thing that I have to say that I really enjoyed about this movie is Spider-Man or Peter Parker just dealing with all the backlash from Tony Stark. It is so awesome to see him having to deal with kind of all this crap that has happened from the result of what Iron Man has done, and that he needs to like fix this. And there's a scene with him specifically saying that, well, Tony Stark wanted me to, not only did he want me to learn how to do this, but he wanted me to be a better person. And I think that really hits home in this movie, because the whole time he's basically struggling with trying to be not just a replacement Iron Man, but he needs to be better than Iron Man.
Right. How can you be?
Right.
So I think, I don't know, and that kind of goes into one of those things where, Tony Stark and his little handwritten post-it almost caused more harm than good.
Which is what happened in Homecoming.
Right, exactly. It's the same thing, and it's so him, like that's his character.
Yep, that is his character.
But it's certainly not like, oh, here's a holovid. Which I'm glad they didn't do, right? Yeah. I'm glad they don't have an augmented. That needs to be it. I think it needs to be this needs to be the last time we see Tony Stark in a movie. No, I think they need to let his character rest. It was well deserved, and parts of this were a good homage to him. But these need to be Spider-Man movies. So,
yeah, and I think to me that is another one of my likes is having Tony Stark so inundated in this movie is such a really cool way to where he keeps seeing Tony Stark everywhere, and he sees Iron Man everywhere, and to have him overcome that again, this story is really important to Spider-Man becoming not only essentially better than Iron Man, but his just evolution as a character, for him to be that he's like the important, like he's like that important, and Tony Stark knows that he's that important. And so having all of this happen in this movie, I love that all that's in there. I love seeing Tony Stark everywhere, and then in the next movie to see him nowhere means that Spider-Man is surpassed, and as where he should be.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I really hope that that's the case, like you're saying, where you just don't see him anymore afterwards, because that means everything that's led up to this is now him, and it's his movie. And they've done a fantastic job of doing that with Spider-Man, considering there was no plan at all to have Spider-Man in these movies up till, like, you know, like Civil War.
Right,
like,
yeah.
There was...
I know, because it just wasn't it took them that long to figure it out.
Yeah, it took them that. It wasn't possible because they had to figure out how to get him in these movies. And to see them, like, right around this and have it be coherent and make sense and have this evolution of this character is so good. They did such a good job considering this character didn't even exist until more than half the movies were out. It's amazing that they were able to do that. And it's just, like, so good. It's a very comic book thing, and it's great. And they did a really good job. And those are all my likes, man.
Great. You ready to rate it?
Yep, let's rate it. I'm going to rate it to see it, because of course I am. Everybody go watch Spider-Man Far From Home. It's great. I think I liked Homecoming slightly better, but they are very on par.
Yeah.
They're just really good movies. They're just really good.
You know,
so
yeah, I think this adds to Spider-Man and to his to I think the world that he's going to inherit moving forward. So it didn't feel like, it felt like a really strong sequel. It felt like a good issue that we were watching. So, you know, even the stuff that bothered me, I really didn't, you know, I'm willing to let go, because literally with any movie anymore today, you could find things to totally pick apart, and it's just impossible to cover every plot hole. That's just not doable. I know for sure it's not. So
yeah, it's just not how it works.
I'm going to say see it, buy it.
Awesome.
Add it to the collection.
Add it to the collection. I'm still waiting on that ridiculous... I don't know if Disney's announced this or not, but the ridiculous, just all the phases, just all in one huge pack.
Box.
That's...
You know, I mean, the thing is, for real movie buffs like us, right?
Yeah.
Cinephiles or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that is going to be a thing, right? That's what collectors are going to do. They're going to continue to do that. But what Disney wants is not for you to buy that. They want you to be sucked into their streaming thing forever, which is so funny, because Disney is actually going to lose the rights to stream all their content that has been on Netflix for the past 2 years. They're actually going to lose from Disney Plus in like 2024. So Star Wars, a lot of Black Panther, a lot of those things which are leaving Netflix and going to Disney Plus are going to revert unless Disney does what they should have done at the very beginning, and that is buy Netflix. So I am still holding out hope here. I think it needs to happen. They got to do it.
Do not think... I feel like that conversation has happened multiple times.
I know.
And I do not think Netflix will sell. I don't think they'll sell.
It's gotta happen. It's gotta happen.
I do not think... The way Netflix runs, I swear that there's like... I feel like the chance of them selling it to Disney is so small. Just like,
you know,
not how they do
what
things.
they should do is just put in writing, hey, we're gonna keep your guys on board. Here's the pipeline, and I know Disney's already invested money in this, but it's so stupid. Absorb their content too. You let Netflix just churn everything out. You don't have to deal with it. You don't have to worry about it. It's like Pixar. They're gonna make, they're just let them do their thing. You don't need oversight.
Oh, man.
Anyway, it's just so stupid of me, but whatever.
Alright, man. So let's go ahead and sign out.
Okay.
If anybody wants to contact us, we always have our home on the web, halfpastpodcast.com.
Like us on Facebook.
We're on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify.
We're on Stitcher, Libsyn, and TuneIn. I love my Stitcher app.
It's freaking Stitcher, man. I actually need to get us back onto another one. My coworker was like looking for our podcast, and he couldn't find it because he uses Castbox. So now I have another partner.
Forget it. I'm not saying one more thing. I'm not saying one more thing. All right, I can say one more thing, I guess.
You can always email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
Do you check that email often, do you?
Tweet us. Do. I check that email every day,
I love you. I love you for doing that. Tweet us at halfpastpodcast.
Thank you for listening, and thank everybody for your support. This has been a fun episode.
Hang on a minute.
I enjoyed this.
So what is
I have no idea. I think Hobbs and Shaw. I think Hobbs and Shaw is next.
Hang on a minute here. Do you have? Okay.
We're at the end of the summer here.
So that's August 1st when it comes out. Is there really no? I mean, there's 2 other weekends in July. That can't be right.
I mean, there are other movies, but do you want to do the movies?
Okay, so the kids have talked about seeing The Lion King.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely going to watch The Lion King.
You are.
I don't know why we would rate that one, though. I don't know why we would do that.
Right, yeah. That may not really be. Yeah. Nope, I'm not going to go and watch another Tarantino movie.
Oh, to hell with that. Did I ever release Hateful Eight?
No, because I think you were so pissed off at me that I don't even think you might have finished it, but it was such a bad sounding podcast, and it was entirely my fault. But I remember you were just like not happy with me at all, like it was one of those discussions where you were wondering if we should even be doing the podcast at all anymore. Nice. That's how bad I was for Hateful Eight. I'm not a fan at all of Tarantino
I'll
films.
have to look that up whether we actually released Hateful Eight or not.
No, we didn't. So our number
we
system,
absolutely recorded Hateful Eight.
You know what we should do? You know what would be fun to do? What if we did this next weekend? Because I enjoy being able to see you.
Yeah.
And I do have time next weekend to do a podcast. I think it would be great for us to finish Maze Runner. I've never seen the third one.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
What do you think about doing Scorch Trials?
Okay, let's do it.
All right, that's a deal. That's a date. Let's
do it. We'll do it. And I guess Scorch Trials is the second one. What the heck is the name of the third movie?
Oh, wait. It is?
I don't remember the name of the third movie.
God, what's the third one called?
I don't remember what the third one is, but let's do it.
Yep, okay. Yep. Maze Runner 3.
Alright, so Maze Runner 3 will be our next one. That'll be a random freaking podcast.
The Death Cure is the final one.
Alright.
Makeup cast.
Makes awesome. Sense. Makeup cast.
Alright.
Alright, this is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Jonesy.
See you next flick.
There we go.